Well, Portia Berry-Kilby is a political commentator with Young Voices. Evening to you.
Hi, Cristo. How are you?
I'm
And good evening,
fine,
Ash.
thank
Good
you.
evening.
So you're young, right?
Thank you.
May I ask your age bracket? I won't be so rude as to ask a lady their age, but what is your
Let's
bracket?
say under 25.
Under 25. So you are the woke young generation that this would apply to, is being described. If you were in the RAF and I described you as an airwoman, would you say, actually, that is too specific when it comes to gender? Should be described as an aviator.
I wouldn't. I might be in the young generation, but I'm afraid to disappoint. I'm not in the woke young generation. I think you had the term airman before women were in the RAF, supposedly, and just because that meant only men occupied that role doesn't mean that airman only applies to men. Similarly with words like chairman, it's maybe chairman because only men at one point were chairman, but it doesn't mean that a man has to be in that role, and that if you called me a woman chairman, I wouldn't take offence.
Or a chairwoman. I mean, was it right that people asked for the women's rights lobby used to say, well, actually, you should say chairwoman when it's a chairwoman, or a firefighter? Because remember, we changed
actress and actor. They've changed that now. They only want to be called actors.
No, but we did change. Remember, we used to change fireman to firefighter.
Fisher people.
And so, I mean, was it right that we made that change from fireman to firefighter all those years ago, do you think?
I mean, we are also called women and woman, so we have men and man in our name. I don't think it really matters. I think treading on eggshells and redefining terms just to be inclusive when there's no offence caused by calling someone a fireman. If you take offence by being called a fireman, there's probably something bigger wrong.
But if you were a woman and you're a firefighter, then would you not want to be called a firewoman or a firefighter instead of a fireman?
Not particularly. No more so than being a woman. I'm happy being called a woman rather than a woe woman.
But you wouldn't want to be a policeman, would you? You want to be a policewoman, wouldn't you? I mean, if you were
or is it going to be a crime fighter now? I don't know. I mean, policewoman, is that an offensive term?
I think people make the mistake by assuming that the term policeman is inherently gendered, rather than policeman applying to the person who occupies the role of a person who polices.
Yeah. So you think that policeman now actually encompasses everything, and that it's acceptable if you're a woman to be called a policeman?
Yes. In that way, maybe I'm so woke it's gone full circle. I don't think there needs to be that separation between the two.
But if the query, because the big debate at the moment when it comes to gender neutrality is that it somehow infringes on women's rights because the word woman is being erased. But you'd erase the word woman anyway, but not because of wanting to be gender neutral, but just because you think there's no need to overcomplicate things, right?
No need to overcomplicate it. In the first place, the word existed to apply to the occupier of the role. Now we have women also occupying the role. We don't need new language to pander to that. We just need to get on and acknowledge that the world has changed and we have men and women in the role.
So what about actress or comedienne? What about those terms? Because they're gendered, aren't they?
Yeah, but the person occupying the role of a person who performs, actor was always gendered as a man. Actress was the woman's role. I don't have an issue with calling an actress an actor, but
but then I think your argument respectfully falls down a little bit when it comes to the police, because if your argument is that actor and actress are okay because they need to be gendered because you might need a woman for one part, you might need a man for another part, well, there are going to be scenarios within the police where you're going to need a policeman.
What about waiter and waitress?
Or a policewoman, because if it comes to searching someone, for instance, if it comes to certain crimes where people might want to have a female or a male officer investigating them, if everyone's called a policeman, then you're not going to know the difference if you're looking down the list of people that you might need to assign. You know, PC Smith or Policeman Smith could be a man or a woman, which is why we used to have WPC. So isn't that a kind of inconsistency in your argument?
I think arguably yes, but I think the issue comes in taking offence at being called a policeman rather than a policewoman, actress rather than an actor. And ultimately, it doesn't matter, provided I think the male default applies to both in those categories more often than not, and the female form in many of those roles was introduced later. Really, I don't think it adds much, and I think people don't really take offence if they're called a fireman rather than a firewoman.
All right, listen, good to talk to you, Portia Berry-Kilby, who is a political commentator with Young Voices UK. When we come